Today on ZZZ Made Easy, we're watching the director's cut for zzzero Anby. In version 2.3, Anby has received a rework. In this guide, we're going to cover Anby's new main mechanics and moves, how you can build her, and some teams you can go into. You don't have to know Anby's old kit, I'm going to be treating her like a new agent. zzzero Anby is a separate unit from the A-rank green stun Anby. This Anby is an S-rank electric attacker from the Defense Forces Silver Squad. She can count as part of Oboe Squad for faction conditions. Anby is an on-field DPS agent specializing in Aftershock damage. She can empower all Aftershocks, and this rework will utilize ally Aftershocks to assist Anby further. With a new dodge mechanic, Anby's on-field fighting has gotten much more fluid, and she's gotten tweaks to address some older issues. Let's see if the special training has paid off. As Anby attacks, she will apply a Silver Star mark to enemies. Continue to attack to charge the 3-stage mark. Each big section is called White Thunder. If you're having trouble seeing the Silver Star mark, you can turn off damage numbers, but with the rework, they have made the mark super visible when it is fully charged. I'll keep the damage numbers off for the tutorial sections, but by the end of this guide, my goal is to get you comfortable enough to know how much Anby's charging the mark based on feel. If Anby doesn't have the first White Thunder charged up, pressing special would do her regular special, Celestial Thunder, which is a small hop and slash. You can use this move for comboing, but generally it's tougher to fit in since it only works without any White Thunder. When Anby has at least one White Thunder, pressing special will instead do regular special, Azure Flash. This dash to the enemy is Anby's main move and it consumes one White Thunder charge. As this happens, Anby will deal one instance of Aftershock damage. Azure Flash has iframes with good dash range. It will put Anby behind small enough enemies. The main gameplay loop for Anby is to fully charge the Silver Star, then do 3 Azure Flash dashes to trigger White Thunder's Aftershock damage. If you can do this within a short enough period, Anby will summon a Thunder Smite Lightning Bolt, which deals 1 extra tick of Aftershock damage. A big change that wasn't listed in the descriptions is that they extended how long you have to chain 3 Azure Flashes and still trigger Thunder Smite. Previously, you basically had to do all 3 back to back to back. With the rework, Anby has around 2 seconds before she needs to do another Azure Flash. Anby can now do something like Azure Flash, basic attack, second Azure Flash, dodge counter, third Azure Flash, and still trigger Thunder Smite. The extended grace period opens Anby up to more fluid comboing than just triple Azure Flashes. With all this being said, Anby also gets a new move. When Thunder Smite is triggered and Anby's doing an Azure Flash or her EX special, she automatically follows up with Azure Flash Boundary. Boundary is an Aftershock move with iframes and it deals more damage than Thunder Smite. It occurs automatically after Anby's main gameplay loop of getting 3 Azure Flashes for a Thunder Smite proc, so you don't have to do anything differently. You only have to get used to the timing of this new triple Azure Flash combo. Anby's core passive has received a few updates. First, Anby's damage against foes with Silver Star is increased by 25%. Pretty simple damage boost. Foes with Silver Star will take additional crit damage from Aftershocks equal to 35% of Anby's crit damage stat. The rework bumped this up from 30%. To simplify, the more crit damage Anby has, the more crit damage all Aftershocks deal against foes with Silver Star. Anby has to be on field for the Silver Star mark to be active. This means she only really boosts Aftershocks for herself and off-field agents. Even though the Aftershock mechanic is usually for off-field attacks, Anby's sort of like the main on-field Aftershock driver. Now, for new core passive effects, if Anby defeats an enemy with leftover White Thunder charges, she will trigger Thunder Smite onto the nearest enemy. This ability gives Anby better damage against mobs of enemies. As she cleans them up, she can splash extra damage, but only if the enemy has excess White Thunder. If you defeat a foe with 1 White Thunder using Azure Flash, that will not trigger the bonus because there are no leftover White Thunder charges. For the last new effect, when Silver Star is active, ally Aftershock attacks can build Silver Star charge once every 5 seconds. From what I can tell, this is somewhere around 17 to 20%. With this new effect, Anby further benefits from having other Aftershock teammates. It's a bit tough to keep track of when this effect is activated, but generally speaking, Anby will just be charging Silver Star faster now. Anby's additional ability is really good and only requires a Stoner support agent ally. Anby gets a free 10% crit rate. When Anby's the active agent and foes have Silver Star, she increases the entire squad's Aftershock damage by 25%. Last, with the rework, Anby's chain attack and ultimate are now considered Aftershock damage moves. This additional ability basically gives free crit rate, extra Aftershock damage, and importantly, her high burst moves are now considered Aftershocks. Very nice update. Since we're here, let's cover those moves. Anby's chain attack is a simple burst damage move that grants around 20 to 25% charge. It's not the most reliable for filling up Silver Star, but its damage is appreciated now that it's an Aftershock. As for Anby's ultimate, it has a pretty good damage multiplier and it fully charges Silver Star to 100%. Anby's burst gets even better with the new Aftershock addition, and then you can pull off the triple Azure flashes plus boundary combo right after. Anby has a couple more important moves for building Silver Star charge. With 60 energy, you can hold down special to do Anby's EX special, Sundering Bolt. The EX special spinning attack can build 100% charge, but it must hit the enemy for the entire duration of the move. After EX special, Anby can then do her 3 Azure flashes for a nice burst damage combo. Anby's dodge counter is one of her most important moves. Besides the usual iframes after activation, Anby also builds exactly 50% charge for Silver Star. 2 dodge counters back to back means you can now do the triple Azure flashes. For smooth on-field fighting, knowing this move gives 50% charge is very important. The dodge counter actually got new mechanics with the rework. After a dodge counter, Anby also gains a new voltage overload state for 15 seconds. Her sword hilts will glow, her dodge now has a blue tinge, and there's a slight sound effect. In this state, Anby can now use Azure Flash during her basic attack, dash attack, or dodge counter animations. Essentially, Anby can animation cancel with Azure Flash during her main on-field moves. With the new grace period for activating Thunder Smite, you can pull off some flashy new plays that weren't possible before. To add to this, Anby's dodge performance is enhanced during voltage overload. That is quite vague, but Anby is able to dodge out of some moves such as her 5th basic attack or her dodge counter itself. Word of caution, Anby has to land the entire dodge counter move to get the 50% charge. You now have more control and freedom, but try not to get too antsy or you aren't going to get that 50% if you cancel the dodge counter early. For the last effect, if an enemy doesn't have any White Thunder charges, you can press special to do EX special, assuming you have 60 energy. This introduces a new input method. After you do your Azure flashes to consume White Thunder, instead of holding special, you can just keep tapping to chain into an EX special. I'll go over a few scenarios where this input can be useful in just a moment. The general gist of Voltage Overload is that it gives Anby more freedom and fluidity to her on-field fighting. You don't have to use everything it offers, but it's a great update for those that want more control over their agents in battle. Moving on, Anby's basic attack string is a very important part of her gameplay and has quite a few quirks. As part of the rework, Anby's 3rd basic attack has now changed. Instead of a thinner sword throw, Anby's blades now spin in a much wider area, and she can keep smaller enemies together. Nice addition for more AoE potential. There are 2 main ways to do the basic attack combo. First, what I will call the mash combo quite simply involves you button mashing basic attack, no timing needed. Anby has 5 individual parts for her basic attack string. The 4th basic can be extended to multiple dashes if you keep pressing the button. Eventually, it will end with the 5th basic spinning slam. The 4th and 5th basics do have some iframes. The mash combo can also be called the hold combo because after the 2nd basic attack input, if you hold down the button, Anby will do everything automatically. I'll be saying the mash combo throughout this video, but feel free to do the hold input method if that's more comfortable for you. Now, the second way to do basic attacks is what I refer to as Anby's full combo. After the 3rd basic attack input, you want to pause until Anby catches her swords. This move is referred to as the 3rd basic finisher in the stats page. After the sword catch, you can keep basic attacking to continue to the 4th and 5th attacks. If you're familiar with Green Stun Anby, she has a similar pause mechanic in her basic attacks if you want to do the Thunderbolt kick. It's nice to see zzzero Anby retain that little minigame, and this 3rd basic finisher can matter in some situations. With most of Anby's main moves covered, let's dive into some gameplay scenarios. Our main goal is to get enough Silver Star charge to do the triple Azure flashes into Thunder Smite proc into Boundary. There are many ways to do this. Let's stick with basic attack combos for now. Anby's mash basic attack combo fills just about 50% Silver Star charge. This means you can do 2 mash combos for 100% charge into your triple Azure flashes. In actual combat, you're going to have to use Anby's dodge counter, which fills 50%. If you have an opening, you can basic attack after, but you'll notice that doing the mash combo will not get Anby to 100% charge. This is because after the dodge counter, Anby skips to her 2nd basic attack. To replace the missing 1st basic attack's Silver Star charge, you can use your 3rd basic finisher. This means after a dodge counter, you want to do the full basic attack combo, pause the 3rd basic till Anby catches her swords, then proceed to the 4th and 5th attacks. Now Anby will get her 100% charge. Before things get complicated, let's review Anby's general burst damage combos. After you do your triple Azure flashes plus boundary on any target, you can follow up with an EX special. If the spinning blades hit for the entire duration, that fully recharges Silver Star. Do another triple Azure flash combo. We can just call this the EX special burst combo. When it comes to stun phases, Anby wants to ideally have her Silver Star charged beforehand. This is because A, the chain attack doesn't fill that much charge, and B, you want to immediately do a triple Azure Flash after the chain attack sequence. After the triple Azure Flash, be sure to wait for Boundary to finish, then use Anby's ultimate. That will fully recharge Silver Star, allowing for another triple Azure Flash combo. If you still have stun time, do an EX Special Burst combo, maybe do 2 if you have full energy. Let's say you mess up and you enter the stun phase with only 2 White Thunder. Anby can recover from this by doing 1 chain attack and then 2 basic attacks after. This is quick enough that I think it's worth doing, assuming the boss has a longer stun timer. For another variation, if Anby can do 1 chain attack then re-enter via quick assist, then you only need to do 1 basic attack. Proceed with your triple Azure Flashes into ult. So far, these scenarios are all things you could do with the old Anby. From here on, let's cover new possibilities thanks to the rework. The biggest game changer for Anby is the longer timer for chaining 3 Azure Flashes to trigger Thunder Smite. Instead of triple Azure Flashes, we can fit in other actions between the Azure Flash procs. I refer to this idea as delaying Thunder Smite. To get the general timing for how long you can delay Azure Flash, here is an in-game visualization. Fill up Silver Star, then do your first Azure Flash. Afterwards, Anby chains to her second basic, so you can do that plus her third basic, plus the third basic finisher. Do a second Azure Flash, repeat the basic attacks plus third finisher, then end with your third Azure Flash. This will not trigger Boundary because the time it takes to do Azure Flash after that third basic finisher is the cutoff point. We're too slow. To fix this, instead of doing the third basic finisher, you can Azure Flash while Anby's swords are still spinning. The problem is that Anby can't Azure Flash during this animation without voltage overload. With an extra step, this is possible without voltage overload. While Anby's swords are spinning, you can dodge to cancel the animation. This will allow Anby to do Azure Flash in time to chain together Thunder Smite. In actual combat, Anby is supposed to be dodge counting, which means we have voltage overload. With this buff, Anby can Azure Flash during her basic attacks at any point, which means you can easily chain Azure Flash before the third basic finisher. Here's the funny thing though. With voltage overload, we can bypass that small input lag between the third basic finisher and Azure Flash. As soon as Anby catches her swords, you can Azure Flash slightly faster, and this is good enough to keep the Thunder Smite chain going. I wouldn't say the timing is insanely tight, but this is a case where voltage overload is required. This should also highlight a few things. First, the window for chaining Azure Flashes is decently generous. 2 whole basic attacks after Azure Flash is about the cutoff. Second, Anby no longer needs to fully charge Silver Star before doing Azure Flash. With the delayed Thunder Smite timing, Anby can recharge Silver Star in between Azure Flashes. This makes Anby's gameplay much more fluid. We have so many more options now. One of the best ways to use this delayed Thunder Smite is to get a dodge counter for 50% charge. Instead of iframing with the triple Azure Flashes, Anby can instead do dodge counters in between to recharge her mark. You then continue the Azure Flashes to get Thunder Smite plus Boundary. Anby will have leftover Silver Star charge to work toward the next Thunder Smite. Another good use case is the new EX Special Tap input method when voltage overload is active. Let's say Anby only has 2 White Thunder ready. If you have voltage overload, you can do 2 Azure Flashes, then tap special a third time. This will trigger the EX Special because the enemy doesn't have White Thunder. You can then tap special a 4th time, and Anby does her 3rd Azure Flash. With the delayed timing, you still trigger Thunder Smite plus Boundary. Thanks to the EX Special, you are left with 2 White Thunder. That makes getting the next Thunder Smite faster. Naturally, this method can work when you start with 1 White Thunder. You just do 2 Azure Flashes after the EX Special instead. Now, you don't have to use any of this, but voltage overload and the delayed Thunder Smite timing open up so many possible combos for Anby. The core gameplay still revolves around getting 3 Azure Flashes in a certain time period, but you have more ways to go about doing so now. For even more flexibility, Anby gets bonus Silver Star charge from ally Aftershocks. This is about 20% charge every 5 seconds, but trying to keep track of this can be pretty crazy depending on the Aftershock partners. The general combos I went over can all be done without this bonus charge. For any delayed Thunder Smite combos, the extra charge can be appreciated for setting up future Azure Flashes. There is one case I'd like to highlight, and that is with the dodge counter. Instead of 50% charge, with an ally Aftershock, Anby actually gets to at least 66% or 2 White Thunder. Instead of doing the full basic attack combo after, Anby can also just do the mash combo and you'll get to 100% charge anyway. In fact, Anby gets the full charge before the 5th basic attack. Thanks to voltage overload, you can just go immediately into Azure Flash as soon as you see the Silver Star emit that fully charged signal. Before we move on, I'd like to highlight Boundary and the delayed Thunder Smite timings. Thunder Smite triggers after 3 White Thunder Aftershocks on the same enemy. When you have groups of enemies with full Silver Star marks, sometimes Azure Flash misses one. What is going to happen is that Boundary will occur on the first pair of enemies. Since it doesn't last that long, you can still Azure Flash to that second enemy, trigger Thunder Smite, and then proc Boundary again. Anby isn't an AoE or grouping master, but this delayed Thunder Smite timing plus the Boundary moves AoE does improve her potential. Fighting multiple elites can get super hectic, but Boundary gives you some breathing room with its iframes, and not having to do triple Azure Flashes all the time allows Anby to throw in dodge counters or use that tap Eoc special with voltage overload. As we get into builds, I want to talk about what stats Anby wants and gets for free. Her core passive effectively shares a portion of her own crit damage with everyone's Aftershock crits. Anby makes use of any in-combat crit damage buffs, no problem. For allies, they will need to get their own critical hits, but Anby gets a pretty good head start with her main build. With core passive level E and her additional ability, Anby is already up to about 30% crit rate. If you use 2-piece Woodpecker Electro and 4-piece Shadow Harmony, that's another 20%, bringing Anby just under 50% crit rate. Naturally, Anby wants as much attack, crit damage, and crit rate as possible. For W engines, Anby's signature is Severed Innocence, and it grants 48% crit damage as its main stat with another 30% in combat. The user gains 1 stack for landing basic attacks, specials, or aftershocks. Each stack grants 10% crit damage for 30 seconds, and they're calculated separately. If Anby has all 3 stacks, she gets another 20% electric damage. Anby wants to always be basic attacking and using Azure Flash, which is a special and an aftershock. 3 stacks will give her a hilarious 108% crit damage via this signature. Anby's core passive will just further empower all aftershock crits. For other S-rank W engines, there are a few generalist crit rate plus crit damage options such as Evelyn's or Hugo's signature. Those will all be fine, but a lot of attack signatures can work. Anby does like crit damage, but you still need crit rate to make it useful. Good Old Still Cushion is a perfectly fine option, plus Anby does dash behind enemies sometimes, so she can get that bonus damage. For A ranks, Mercado Desire or Cannon Rotor are the 2 crit rate options with bonus attack. Sadly, these are event and battle pass W engines respectively. For the craftables, since Anby is on field and loves to dodge counter a lot, Starlight Engine is serviceable with its pure attack stacking bonuses. Might not be as good with an attack buff for support, but it's perfectly fine for fill-up options. Normally, I wouldn't suggest straight Superstar, but since Anby's ultimate got changed to be an Aftershock, it does deal respectable burst itself. If you have something like Jifufu or other ultimate focused agents, then this could be a nice option for specific fights. 4-piece Shadow Harmony will be Anby's tailor-made drive descent. She does 3 Aftershocks with her triple Azure Flash gameplay loop, and this gets the max 12% attack and 12% crit rate buff. Anby can refresh the buff with dash attacks, or you can sprinkle in a fancy new Azure Flash animation cancel. For 2-piece sets and the Partition 4 main stat, we're basically looking for extra crit rate until you're happy. If you have Anby's signature, it doesn't grant any crit rate, and if you go 2-piece Woodpecker with 4-piece Shadow Harmony, you only get to 50% crit rate total. Personally, I'm more comfortable with at least 70 to 80% crit rate, which means you either need pretty good crit rate substats, or you're just going to go with the crit rate Partition 4 main stat. You could do both, since the signature just grants a hilarious amount of crit damage anyway. Now, if you run a crit rate W engine, which there are some decent options for, then you definitely want to go crit damage Partition 4. For Partition 5, Anby stacks some percent damage bonuses, but I would say electric damage is still generally the go-to, especially if you run an attack buffing ally. Percent attack can work fine, and pen ratio can be used with arena teams. Some of Anby's best allies though utilize Defense Shred. In that case, you probably want to avoid pen ratio. For other 2-piece sets, if you feel like you got enough crit rate, you can go Branch and Blade Song for more crit damage. You can run Puff Electro for pen ratio or Thunder Metal for electric damage if you have really good substats. For teams, Anby needs to be on field to empower off-field Aftershock agents. We have a couple Aftershock stunners and you can run double stunners, but Anby would love an Aftershock sub DPS to complement her on-field playstyle. If you don't want to run Aftershock allies, that's okay. Anby will work with the typical stun plus support team, or you can go double support / buffers. The main reason Anby got reworked so soon is because her main teammate was released last update. Orphe and Magus synergize with Anby perfectly. They're an Aftershock sub DPS who work almost entirely off field, and Orphe can grant an attack buff and give defense shred for Anby. Anby's extra Silver Star charge when ally Aftershocks occur can happen every 5 seconds, which is the exact cooldown for Orphe's Aftershock procs. These two are ideal teammates, and you have a very solid double DPS team. To fill the last spot, Trigger completes the Defense Force team as an electric Aftershock stunner. She can provide her always active stun damage multiplier, and with Signature, she can also add Deep and Shred with Orphe. Trigger is incentivized to build crit rate, so she can take advantage of Anby's crit damage sharing for a little extra damage. For other Aftershock stunners, Jifufu is a new face since Anby's debut. She's not specialized for Aftershock, but Senior Fufu buffs chain attacks and ults, gives 4,000 decibels limit with a small refund, and she can give innate crit damage buffs while also probably being the best King of the Summit user. More crit damage for Anby, and her chain attack and ult being Aftershocks now benefit from Jifufu. Last, Pulchra is the A rank Aftershock off-field stunner. She gives bonus Aftershock damage with her additional ability, and with Anby's special focus gameplay, she can easily proc Pulchra's Aftershock condition. If you want to try double supports, Anby works nicely with Astra plus Nicole. Astra brings the big attack buffs while Nicole brings Deep and Shred and crit rate with M6. Since Anby's mark stays charged when you swap out, you can swap to Nicole, use her EX special, and then come back on Anby for a full Azure Flash burst combo. For general team building, you can mix and match any of these units here. Anby plus 1 stun plus 1 support is totally fine if you don't got Orphe or you don't want to double up. For more teams, you can use Rena with a pen ratio build on Anby. Trigger can be the third electric ally, but if you have her signature, then its Deep and Shred and Rena's pen ratio will clash slightly. For double electric DPS teams, Anby can be used with Seed. This is fine, but Seed is generally the main on-foot agent, with Anby mostly just coming in for EX specials for a quick combo. If you want to use the new buffs from the rework, you're probably going to want to have Anby be the main on-foot focus. Her Silver Star can buff ally Aftershocks, but Anby has to be on field for that to happen, which is why Orphe is her main teammate now. If you're looking for other options, any attack buffer can fill a third slot. Yuzuha and Lucy can work in place of Astra. Yuzuha actually does have an Aftershock, which will grant bonus Silver Star charge, plus she could be an unfitted Game Ball user if you need extra crit rate. If Anby is the solo DPS, you can use Caesar. Anby wants to be dodging a ton, but doesn't hurt to have the extra shielding. Anby's Mindscapes have been affected by the rework. For M1, on EX special hit, Anby triggers White Thunder's additional Aftershock damage 3 times. This does not consume White Thunder on the enemy. With M1, since you trigger White Thunder's Aftershocks 3 times, you trigger Thunder Smite. Because you triggered Thunder Smite while doing EX special, you trigger the new Boundary move. Basically, with M1 after EX special, Anby will do Boundary immediately after. For Mindscape 2, Anby gains 12% crit rate, and on ultimate cast, she gains 6 stacks of Thunder's Cry. Azure Flash will consume Thunder's Cry instead of White Thunder, but it still triggers the Aftershock damage. More crit rate is great, but the main M2 effect allows Anby to do 9 Azure Flashes after ultimate. 6 will come from consuming Thunder's Cry, then 3 more via the ultimate filling up White Thunder normally. With the rework, there is a new line that states after 3 Thunder Cries is consumed, Anby's next Azure Flash Boundary has a faster activation. Since Boundary now exists, the time it takes to do all 9 dashes is longer. To make up for this, the first and second Boundary will have a faster animation. Anby still wants to do 9 Azure Flashes after ultimate, the rework just now throws in 3 Boundary activations in between. For M4, very simple, against foes with Silver Star Mark, Anby ignores 12% electric resistance. Not much else to say. For M6, upon triggering 6 White Thunder Aftershocks, Anby generates a vortex dealing 1000% attack as electric Aftershock damage. Mindscape 6 builds off of M1 and M2. Anytime Anby gets the Aftershock damage from White Thunder 6 times, she gets an extra attack. For example, with M1 you can cast EX Special, then do Boundary, do the 3 Azure Flashes, and this triggers M6's extra attack. With M2, consuming Thunder's Cry still triggers White Thunder's Aftershock. That will count toward M6's extra attack. All in all, if you want to invest in ZZero Anby, her signature grants a ridiculous amount of crit damage to play into her core passive. If you get M2, the free crit rate can help with your builds, and in general, M1 and M2 do add extra gameplay features for Anby. You'll get more Boundary procs, plus the crazy 9 Azure Flashes after ultimate will give a new DPS rotation. For the after party tips section, there are a few more moves to talk about. Anby's dash attack is fairly straightforward and can re-trigger Shadow Harmony if you don't want to use Azure Flash at that moment. The dash attack will chain into Anby's second basic attack. Anby has the regular defensive assist that costs 2 assist points against bigger attacks. Sadly, the assist follow-up only grants about the same charge as the chain attack. Now, if you have ally Aftershocks, you can do the full basic attack combo after the assist follow-up. All of these together will fully charge Silver Star. For Anby's EX special, it should grant full charge, but if you end up missing the target, you can chain directly into the 4th basic attack after. This can be a plan B with some iframes, and maybe the 4th and 5th basics can fill the rest of the market. For some extra tactics, Anby makes good use of the dodge parry assist, officially called the assist counter endgame. This is a dodge counter into perfect assist in very fast succession. If you can pull it off, Anby will get the 50% charge for Silver Star while you swap out. Another useful tactic now is the double chain attack, since Anbys are considered Aftershock damage. For some bonus knowledge, if you have an Aftershock ally who can proc the extra Silver Star charge during the double chain attack, then Anby can actually fill 2 White Thunder, something to keep in mind if you don't start the Sun phase fully prepared. For some other good to know traits, Anby can block projectiles while sprinting, same as her stun form. If you need to start the stun early, Anby's 3rd basic finisher is a heavy attack. Conversely, you can stall the chain attack sequence by doing the mash base attack combo to skip to the 4th and 5th attacks. Last thing I want to showcase is Boundary's interaction with the core passives, Thunder Smite on a nearby enemy if Anby kills a target with extra White Thunder. Let's say the enemy has 2 White Thunder and Anby uses Azure Flash. Azure Flash consumes 1 White Thunder, and if it kills a target, then Thunder Smite triggers on a nearby foe, thanks to the core passive. Boundary specifically is triggering if Thunder Smite occurs while Anby does Azure Flash or her EX special. Both of those conditions are met, so that's why Boundary can happen without the usual 3 Azure Flashes. Naturally, the same can occur if Anby gets the kill with her EX special, something to keep in mind for clearing groups of mobs. zzzero Anby is definitely a lot more fun to play now. The rework addressed some of her issues plus added new moves while still maintaining her core gameplay loop of charging Silver Star and doing 3 Azure Flashes. The key difference is that you now have more ways to get to the end goal thanks to the extended timer on chaining Azure Flash. If you want an aggressive on-foot DPS, then Anby is even better at her job now. If you have Orphe, then she is the teammate Anby has been waiting for, practically the reason this rework is happening so soon. I would assume Orphe's not going to be the last off-field Aftershock damage dealer, but who knows how long it'll be till the next one releases. That's all I have to say about zzzero Anby. Sometimes you have to do some reshoots, and that's okay. We ended up with a much more enjoyable cinematic experience. Thank you for watching, have fun with the new Anby, and I will see you in the next video.